financial argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Today's guest is Claudio Grass. Claudio is one of the founders of goldenliberty.com, also a passionate advocate of free market thinking. Claudio is the Mises ambassador and follower of the teachings of Austrian School of Economics. And I am very happy.
Thank you very much, Dave. Great to have you on the line.
Thank you for being with us today all the way from Switzerland. I really appreciate it. And I wanted to start out in the EU, the Europe area. Since you're out there, you're on the front lines. I wanted to talk about the countries that are deciding to leave the EU. And I wanted to get your take on what's happening since you're there. What are people saying? What's going on? Because we know that the Brexit, UK is trying to leave. We know France, if Marine Le Pen gets in, most likely they're going to have some type of referendum. Germany, they might be looking at it. Italy, yes, they might be looking at it. What's your take on what's going on in Europe?
Well, basically what can be said is, that I have the feeling that the European Union is falling apart. I mean, it's just a matter of time until they will break up. I don't know if the Union will break up before the Euro is breaking up, because that's, the euro is really, it's the most artificial currency backed up by really nothing. And now what we are witnessing over here in Europe is really that the people are standing up, that they are questioning if the EU is really the peace project which has been sold to them. And I think, the last few years, the development, how the public perception has changed, especially when it comes to the establishment and also the media. That's what we are witnessing right now, is the debate having about fake news. It's astonishing. But when you look at Europe, we really have a migration crisis over here, and at the same time, a lot of people realize that it seems to be enforced, even by their own government. And this is leading to problems. And now I think the people are really standing up, because at the same time the real economy is going nowhere. It's since 2008. Basically they just printed money out of nothing, and they spiked up certain asset bubbles like real estate and of course the stock market and government debt in general. But most of the people, they realize that since 20 years they don't earn enough to compensate for the inflation, and that certain assets are rising much higher in prices than their savings and so on. So it's and they also realize that if we stay on the same track, then it's not going in that direction that a lot of people believe is the right one. But also our politicians, they are, of course, statists. They love centralized government, because centralized government also means at the end of the day, a lot of power. And Lord Acton, I think he said, absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so you will find that always on that side, which basically believes that they have the wisdom and that they are smart enough to tell other people the way they have to think, what they are allowed to eat or what they're allowed to drink, and so that they believe they know exactly what other people can make happy. And I think these are the people running the political system. So Therefore, in Switzerland, the opposite is that the sovereign are still the Swiss people, and we are not a centralized nation. Switzerland consists of 26 different states. We have 4 different languages. We had since the start of Switzerland back in 1291, we had Catholics and Protestants, and we always had the whole nation was founded on the principles of subsidiarity, meaning we have an absolute bottom-up approach and not a top-down approach. So we never believed in centralized government. We never believed in a king. We came together in 1291, the Swiss people, because they wanted to fight foreign dukes. They didn't want to accept, paying taxes to foreign rulers. And that's the whole story of Switzerland. And that's still in the genes of the Swiss people. So we Even today, I mean, we have 7 presidents. We don't only have one. And so these 7 presidents, they are the executive board, and everyone is responsible for a certain part of the state. But as you can see, it's already divided, and the history of Switzerland is full that the states have a lot of power, in terms of taxation, in terms of education, in terms of social or welfare benefits, healthcare system, that stuff, and that's why still, Switzerland is the most decentralized country on this planet, and decentralization means also more liberty. Centralization is exactly the opposite. It means no liberty at all. The more centralized the whole system becomes, and so Switzerland is a great example, for to show also the European Union, or even I think in the States, how it that power does not need to be centralized. That it's not going pro the people. That it's most of the time going against their own people. And so I think if the people understand that they can, decentralize, break up in certain regions or states, and there they decide themselves in terms, how they want to support, what needs to be decided in terms of who builds the roads or who will be, a judge, but keep it as small and at the bottom as possible, because even Aristoteles used to say, demos, the village, kratia, the rulers. So democracy can work, but on a very low scale, and people need to understand that the biggest asset basically is to protect individual liberty.
Now, do you think if the EU does break apart, do you think this is going to have a domino effect on other countries? Do you think other countries will join in? Do you think it will hit the United States if this does happen, if the EU does break apart?
Definitely. I think, that's what... then let's have a look at the United States and at the Trump effect, because I always look at the world, the history. It's a kind of a cycle. History rhymes. It doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And so when we look at the whole world, we always. They wanted now. The Clinton clan, for example. They were really the representative of the deep state, and their agenda has been, really globalization, meaning we want to have as much power centralized on a certain level to rule over the rest of the world. That was really the Clinton agenda. And now, of course, with Trump, he's going exactly against that strategy. He's returning back, going away from globalization towards more nationalism again, or putting the nation first. And I think that's why. When the Eurozone is falling apart, it definitely will have an impact on the United States. The whole system, which can only be, kept alive as long as the centralization goes further. But this trend has been broken now. So, and that's why, even over here in Europe, you only hear, thousand times a day, you hear how bad Trump is and what he did wrong again, and what he said there, and that he was lying there. And it's amazing. It's really amazing how the media, and I think that's the great stuff about fake news. It's really an act of enlightenment, because people are starting to question, the news media. They don't believe in that stuff any longer. A lot of people are standing up, and that's why you can also see that the whole newspaper, the mass media, they're losing a lot of readers, they're losing a lot of viewers, and much more people, they basically use the internet and google.com. To find out what's really behind a certain topic, which is now maybe spread all over the news media again. So, George Orwell said once, the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. And I think when people... that's the sheer ignorance when it comes to history. People don't have a clue about their own history. And but if they would know more about history, they would also see certain patterns, which you have seen already in the past. And they would also realize that fake news basically is something which has started, 100 years ago at least, with Edward Bernays, who invented, he wrote the book Propaganda. And he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he basically became, the advisor of Wilson, how to lead, the United States into World War One. I mean, and afterwards he joined big multinational corporations, and he also convinced the women that they should start smoking because that makes them more independent from men and so on. I mean, propaganda is, history is full of propaganda. We can even look at certain wars, how they started. I mean, everyone knows that Vietnam has been started, based on a false flag news item. We know that, Bush and Colin Powell were lying when they were saying, Saddam has weapons of mass destruction and all that stuff. I mean, so we can see it, and, it's going on for a very long time. But now I really have the feeling that people are starting to question it, and therefore I think it's a real act of enlightenment, that they really start to question, and that they, what they now have to learn is basically to talk to each other again and to use their own minds to think independently. And I think this is what we can see on a certain level.
So you're seeing the same propaganda, I mean, from what you're describing and everything that we're seeing here in the United States, where everything that Trump says or does, it's completely bad. You're seeing the same exact thing out there. What are they saying about, like, the economy out in Europe? Are they saying that everything is great and strong and everything's fantastic?
In the United States?
Out in Europe and Switzerland.
Well, yeah, of course, they always say it's better and improved. But I mean, the people, they just don't. They don't see it. They hear, okay, we have deflation, but at the same time, they realize, that rentals are going up. That the healthcare system costs more, and that they have to pay more taxes, and that also the dinner is becoming more expensive, and so on. So, I mean, It's horrible. I mean, the news, I don't follow the news that much. I mean, I don't read. I mean, I just check out every day, what's coming in on certain news, in Germany and the States, and also in Switzerland and France and so on. But I mean, it's always nonsense and destruction from what's really deception, and what's really going on this planet.
So you deal in gold, and I want to ask you a couple questions about gold. We know that Germany, the Bundesbank, they repatriated all of their gold, and they accelerated the process. Why do you think they wanted all their gold back, and why do they want it back so quickly?
Oh, I mean, they initiated that initiative 4 years ago or something. That's when they wanted to start. As far as I know, I mean, I haven't followed now over the last 2 years, because when they started, basically they were saying, well, they hardly got any gold delivered. So there were some stories saying that it needs to be melted or whatever, and that it takes longer to ship and whatever. But I'm not sure if they got it back.
Here in the United States, we continually talk about manipulation. When you look at gold, do you see manipulation like we see manipulation?
Yeah, I mean, this of course, gold is the antidote that basically shows, that there is something wrong. I mean, it's the barometer that shows that something wrong. When the gold price is rising, then even the last guy on the street is realizing, oh, something is going wrong, and maybe at the same time he sees the paper becoming worthless and that there are some economical problems. I mean, then and the gold price is rising. That's so. But I mean, gold is. I think the physical gold market is, I don't know, maybe 0.5% of all the total financial assets on this planet. So, when you look at the COMEX, there you can, the biggest gold exchange so far, I mean, most likely Shanghai is going to take over, or Singapore is going to take over, I mean, the East at least. So, COMEX had, I think, 500 paper claims per physical ounce ready deliverable at the COMEX. So you can always speculate. And this whole system, we are in, it's based on, a lot of, a lot of paper, a lot of credit, a lot of debt. And as long as you don't want to have, a physical, if you don't want to have the gold physically, then you're just, playing around in the paper market.
Do you think the gold price should be much higher at this point?
I think, you can look at gold, for example, when you compare it with the size of the debt of the United States, just the funded debt, the official one, 20 trillions, then you had always seen me look at it, over the last 30, 40 years or 50 years, it always was in correlation. So the gold price was rising with the more debt the Americans, the government added to it. And right now that price is lower than it should be. So there is, so it's a bit, it seems to be a bit oppressed, but I'm sure, that it's going to close the gap again. And gold is, I don't see gold as a trading vehicle, to be honest. I really see gold, especially in the days we are in, it's your insurance. It's nothing else than your insurance. And at the same time, today it also should be clear that you can even save in gold. If you have, even today, if you have some money left and you're saying, okay, that's something for my kids or that's for my pension, I put it on the side. So what do you want to buy? You want to keep it in cash, knowing that cash is depreciating because they are just printing like madness. So, then you have stocks. When you look at the stock market, maybe you don't understand what you're doing exactly. And, the stock market is extremely high. There is a lot of uncertainty. We have a Eurozone banking crisis, a luring one. And then you have, Trump also in the United States, and he wants to do a lot of stuff. He wants to build new roads, reconstruction of the whole infrastructure, but then he wants to have a great army and he wants to invest money in there and he wants to cut down taxes. So, how is he going to finance the whole stuff? Basically has to print it.
That's right, $1 trillion I think he wants to borrow.
I think, if he wants to do, yeah. So, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But even if you have now some money left and you're saying, okay, it's maybe I need it in 10 or in 20 or 30 times if you buy gold, you will be the most happy person with that pension fund, that's for sure. Or I say, right now with all the environment and when we are seeing, how the world has changed within the last 2 years especially, I think, what we are witnessing, this AfD, in Germany, which is going against the establishment. And we have Brexit. We have Le Pen, which might be, as you mentioned before, or Italy, or we have the Netherlands who want to leave, or at least there are forces that want to get out of the euro, and so on. And then we have Trump. In the United States, which, the whole world was told Trump is never going to win, and he finally made it.
Yes.
So, it just shows there is a lot of movement, there is a lot of uncertainty. We had 2008, it stood at 140 trillion credit. Today we are standing at 200, maybe most likely a bit more. So, nothing has changed. We are just keeping a system alive that is taking away our freedom and liberty, that is depreciating our money, and that is driving us into more and more debt. And we are losing, the government is taking over more responsibilities. He will increase his security apparatus, trying to gain more power. And at the end of the day, he can confiscate, whatever he wants. And I think we are really in a transition period the next 2-3 years, where we will see a lot of governments trying to steal as much as possible from their, at the end of the day, the middle class is left in certain countries at least. Once the middle class is also destroyed, then you are really impoverished. And then, but as I said, when I see all that stuff, what's going on today, that really gives me a lot of faith. I really believe it's something good that the people are standing up. I hope that they stay, that it will be peaceful. I think that's because war, if it ends up in civil war and all that stuff, then it's just a repetition. And, we even might end up with another government which has just a different face. But because it was born also by, just shooting the others and not trying to, at least, then secede is a much better option. Or trying, to debate. Look the United States, when I see what's happening on these campuses, at these universities, when I see the people going mad and nuts because of Trump, and that's really horrible. They have been bred they have been taught that kind of stuff at the government forced education system, and children are indoctrinated since they are 6 years old. to learn, you know, that the government is there and taking care of them, and that it's the nanny state. And so, yeah, I mean, this is. You know, it's horrible to see the millenniums, or you know, the elder ones a little bit, that they're not even they don't not even want to debate a different opinion, that they feel offended and going nuts and needed safe spaces and all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is really sick, to be you know, very bluntly, put it very bluntly.
Yes, I mean, we do see this. We see that, you know, this has nothing really to do with Trump. It looks like it's just a movement to get Trump. That's really what it's all about, because the establishment, you could see through in France, in Germany, you know, they're in Italy, they're fighting the people that are in power, and the people in power, they don't want to give up their power. They don't want to give up their control. So they'll use every type of dirty trick, every type of method they possibly can to keep their position. And we can see what just happened to Marine Le Pen. They took away her immunity because she posted some pictures on her Twitter feed, so she can be sued now. We see out in Germany, Angela Merkel, she is, you know, censoring news that doesn't go along with her narrative. So we can see that they're trying all these different things. And of course, they're bringing up Russia and cyber attacks and on the election system, that they're trying to manipulate that. And we can see this. This is what they're trying to do, because they don't want to give up their power. Now, do you think it's too late for everyone rising up right now and saying, you know, we want our system back? Do you think we waited too long?
Well, overall, I mean, you know, it's never too late. And people always have an alternative. Also, when we heard, you know, by the governments over the last few years that there is no alternative, that this is the only way to go. No, I mean, I think it's never too late. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really see, you know, I mean, more clashes in the United States, and I'm also going to see more clashes in the Eurozone, especially also in combination with this mass migration we have witnessed. And of course, you know, these people are coming from a region which has been bombed and occupied, you know, for, you know, 100 years at least, and bombed, you know, for the last 20 years. So there you really have created a house which has, you know, lost parents and property, and now they are coming to Europe in combination with, you know, Islam, which has been promoted especially by the Wahhabis and the Salafists and the Muslim Brothers. So basically, you know, political Islam, and they have, yeah, I mean, that's pretty extreme. But you know, we poisoned a lot of these people because of we did, you know, we fought the war down there. We bombed them back to the Stone Ages, and now we are forcing them, or at least, you know, allowing them to come in, and our governments are enforcing it. I mean, fortunately, no, Switzerland is not part of it. You know, we still have our borders under control, but
so you have closed borders in Switzerland. You control who's coming in, and you vet people who want to come in.
Absolutely. Now we control people who are coming in, and most of the people, they still want to go to Germany. That's the promised land, but they don't want to come to Switzerland. Of course, we also have some refugees. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, I really, you know, I lived 2 years in the Middle East, so I also lived in Syria, in Damascus, for 1.5 years. When I was young, I also made some mistakes. So back then, I was working for the United Nations as a Swiss delegate, you know, as a military, in the form of a military observer. I'm an officer of the Swiss militia system. And so I met down there, you know, I saw the whole region. I was traveling, you know, in Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt. So I have a lot of friends down there, and I met really great people. But of course, it's a completely different culture. And that's the beauty of our planet, that we have different cultures, you know, in different regions. But if we try to mix that stuff all together in massive scale, which happened now in the last few years, I mean, then it's never coming to a good end.
I wanted to ask you about the economy. Going back to 2008, do you think we've recovered? Do you think the global economy has recovered since 2008? Has anything changed since 2008?
Well, you know, the whole situation became worse. I mean, it hasn't changed at all. Okay, I mean, the governments, they can always produce their own statistics. And when I look at the United States, for example, everywhere you hear they have an unemployment rate of now below 5%. When you look at the shadow stats, which is using the same calculation method as back in the 1980s, I think they are standing at 25%. So, you still have more than 40 million Americans on food stamps, for example. And also in Europe, also in Switzerland, the biggest job creator became the government itself. So, they are hiring people, they pay them. Okay, in Switzerland, to be honest, in the past, the bankers used to have the highest salaries, but now basically they are number two behind the government employees.
So the government employees are making more than the bankers now?
Absolutely. They are number one. That's the number one income. Now it's really insane. But of course, so I mean, also, so you can, they took on more debt. They basically created jobs. Look at the states, all the TSA agents and Homeland Security and all that. It's just amazing, So that's job creating based on government funding. And so maybe you bring down, the unemployment rate. But look at, the bigger, this system it's already a centralized system, and now it's centralizing even further. And that means that you can witness that when it comes to people moving, from Africa and the Middle East into Europe, or that you see certain currencies are going away. Even the euro. If the euro is going to face collapse, there will be a big move, most likely, than in the US dollar, because how do you want to have a lot of capital position somewhere? So it might spike up to a dollar strength for a short period of time, but afterwards everything is falling apart. We still we haven't created more jobs. What we have done, basically, we just added more debt.
Do you see a crisis coming? Since nothing has really changed, do you see another crisis coming at all?
No, absolutely, no doubt about that. That's why I'm not in the physical gold because I believe it's funky or it's funny, or I really believe physical gold is money. And now, when you look at, we had, several hundred paper currencies, pure fiat money currencies, and they all collapsed, and usually it lasted for 50 years, I think, average. And now we are basically operating on a fiat paper system since 1971, when President Nixon closed the gold window and the US dollar became the sole world currency reserve. And 1971, and now we are standing at 2017. We have the euro, which basically never had backed up anything. The Japanese are printing like crazy and buying their own debt, and the Chinese, most likely, they have a capital outflow, which shows that they also added. They basically solved, the 2008 crisis by just printing money and also, adding to that and selling more stuff cheaper and so on. But this is, everything comes to an end. The basis of every economy is to save and to invest, and it's not to, to consume and to take on debt. And that's where we are.
Do you think the EU, the Fed, the IMF, do you think they can keep this going? A lot of people thought the economy was going to come down years ago, 2014. Do you think they can keep this going? Because what we're seeing right now after Trump made his speech, we see, in the U.S., we see the stock market soaring right now. And we have, like you said, negative interest rates. We have central banks creating currency out of thin air. How much longer do you think they can keep this going?
At the end of the day, it's people perception. That's as long as the people believe that this piece of paper or a digit on a bank account is still worth something, and they are trapped in the system because they have too much debt, or they are sitting on a really nice house which has tripled and quadrupled in prices and so on, or they are just afraid of changes. But people, that's what we are witnessing. People don't feel safe any longer. And that's why they are starting to question what's going on. and that will, I mean, that is a process which has been started, and I think this is going on in the future. So of course, the IMF and the central banks, they try to keep it as long as working as possible, but it's not sustainable. I mean, if we can create wealth out of nothing, I mean, then, okay, why don't the central banks give us each $1 million US dollar on an annual basis, and we can all live a happy life? We all know that this is not working. So it's as simple as that. And I think, now we can see that the liberties, they're talking about cashless society. They want to control everything. With a cashless society, of course, you have no bank runs. People have no possibility. Everything will be tracked. Everything can be used against you, and the government knows exactly what you have done. And if they don't like you, then they just block the bank accounts you have. I mean, so that's the trend, and this trend is visible, and there is an opposite reaction to it. And I think that's fake news. That's anti-establishment movements. That's secession movements. Yeah. I think that's at least the way I look at the world today, and how I interpret myself, what the sources I use, and the picture I have. So, and you definitely have patterns, also in the past. So you see a lot of same patterns, and you can use really history as a guide to understand what's going on again.
Claudio, I really appreciate you coming on the X22 Report Spotlight. Thank you very much. How can people get in touch with you? How can people